24 Days of Wonder, 24 stories from my 19 years with Santaland on 34th Street. Story 14, Nick Jolly. In 1991, I had started a theater company devoted to recreating old-time radio dramas. These shows were, and still are, performed live on stage, with the premise that you're walking into the radio studio in 1940-something and watching the original broadcast take place. One of our actors was involved with the Episcopal Actors Guild, and through him we ended up performing a benefit night at Guild Hall at the little church around the corner in the summer of 1997. A couple months later, the Guild asked if I would take part in the All Saints' Day service at the church, reading from the Bible. At the little church around the corner, the All Saints' Day service is dedicated to the theater people who had passed away during the previous year, from the famous to the chorus folk. A list is read at the end of the service, and when the list was read, I learned the answer to why Nick Jolly hadn't been at Santaland the last few seasons. If there ever was a man meant to play Santa Claus, it was a man with the given name of Nick Jolly. Nick started during my second season at Santaland, and when he introduced himself to the room in training, he said, "My name is Nick Jolly." Yes, really. He continued to introduce himself that way from then on. Nick always had a joke ready and found humor in any situation, even when he was the butt end of the joke. He came up with about half a dozen lines that were repeated constantly and then used by others at Santaland long after he had left. As you might expect from a man with his name, Nick was wonderful in the red suit. His visits were often more droll than warm, and they were infused with his infectious humor, but kids and adults almost always came out of his visits with a smile on their face. Nick was on my crew in his last year. One day, we were both working overtime due to another round of flu sweeping through the crew. We had reached that lull that generally occurred around 6 p.m., and it was Nick's time to go home, so I stood in the door of his house and watched him as he took his last visitors for the day. A couple in their mid-40s posed with Santa and exchanged a few pleasantries. Santa asked them what they wanted for Christmas, and the man answered, "Santa, I want to figure out a way that my wife can go to her high school reunion in Idaho next month. It means a lot to her, but we just can't afford it. Maybe a winning lottery ticket for Christmas, Santa?" Santa said he assumed the lady wanted the same thing, and she nodded and began to tear up. She said that she had lost touch with all of her friends from school years ago. This was years before the internet was really a useful tool. She continued that she hadn't been home in over 20 years, and if she managed to make it to the reunion, she was especially hoping that her best school friend would be there. They'd been very close, and she thought about her just about every day. She took her husband's hand and added, "I've had a really good life, Santa. I just think it would have been even better if I'd stayed in touch with her." Santa looked up at me and winked, indicating that he was going to need a little bit more time on this visit. I nodded and stayed in the shadows listening. He gave the woman 6 or 7 ideas about how she could try to track down her friend from school besides going to the reunion. He finished by saying, "However, I'm going to pray very hard to try to make your Christmas wish come true. Christmas is about love, and it sounds like you love this lost friend of yours very much. I will pray that you can receive this present this Christmas." The couple left, and I pulled Santa to the back. Fortunately, Nick stopped to talk to one of the managers in the back area before he got to the dressing room and get out of costume, because 5 minutes later, the elf from Santa's house ran to the back asking if I could bring Santa back out again. Well, I assumed that there had been a problem with the picture. Then I realized the elf was tearing up. She took my hand and led me back to the house. And 3 minutes later, with tears in my eyes, I brought Santa back to hear what I had just heard. The woman who had wanted to go to a reunion and her husband were there with a man who had not been with them for the earlier visit. The wife was crying, and the husband told us why. When we got to the register to pay for our picture, this man recognized my wife. This is Jeff. He went to school with my wife. Jeff still lives in Idaho. He's in town to see a friend from his high school. My wife's best friend from high school. The one she told you about? My wife's friend has lived here in New York for 3 years now. 10 blocks away from where we live.